Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Prajatade Satarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for joining us today at ISKCON Scarborough. We really appreciate your valuable time. Actually, the ultimate purpose of this rare human form of life is to become Krishna conscious. And the methods to become Krishna conscious are through devotional practices. And the topmost devotional practices are Shravanam Kirtanam. That is the hearing and chanting of the holy names, the glories, the pastimes, the Vedic philosophy that is related to the Lord. So today, for the next little while, we'll spend some time in Shravanam Kirtanam through Krishna Katha. So as we approach the concluding days of the month of Kartik, we also come to a very special observance. The last 5 days of the month of Kartik are especially auspicious, and they're known as Bhishma Panchaka. Actually, Bhishma Panchaka began yesterday on November 1st. And it is observed in honor of Bhishma Dev, the grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, who, lying on a bed of arrows, fasted, meditated, and in complete remembrance of Krishna, awaited the auspicious moment of Uttarayana, the sun's northern movement, to leave his body. In the Hari Bhakti Vilas, it is stated that if one is capable, one should observe the 5-day fasting period of Bhishma Panchaka for the pleasure of the Lord. And in the Padma Purana, it is stated that one pleases the Lord and makes spiritual advancement when one performs such austerities. And during Bhishma Panchaka, there are different levels of fasting based on one's capacity while still being able to do one's service and sadhana. So as we enter this period, I thought we could immerse ourselves in the life and lessons of Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev portrayed the pinnacle of steadfastness in humility, in devotion, in renunciation. He tried to uphold Dharma amidst the most difficult of circumstances. And in the end, he surrendered everything and emitted his final breath in the presence of the Supreme Lord. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that Bhishma Dev is one of the 12 Mahajans, the pillars of devotion and Dharma. So why is Bhishma Dev included among that list? It is because he demonstrated devotion, bhakti, through complexities. He was not a renunciant that was living in the forest, but rather he was a statesman, he was a leader, he was a politician. But his bhakti was tested amid the politics, the war, his duty, and even heartbreak. And yet through it all, his heart remained fixed on the Supreme Lord. He showed that one can be fully Krishna conscious even while performing worldly responsibilities. Srila Prabhupada explains that Bhishma Dev was not only a great moralist, but he was also a great devotee of Lord Krishna. And that because he is one of the 12 Mahajanas, we should follow his example and learn how to remember Krishna in all circumstances. Now, how did Bhishma come to be anyways? Once, there was a great assembly where a grand yajna was being performed by Lord Brahma in Brahmaloka. And there assembled are many great personalities, demigods, sages, devotees, heads of celestial rivers, so many different kings as well. And so they were all assembled there, and also came King Mahabhisha. Also assembled there was Ganga Devi, the head of the celestial rivers. And when she arrived there, she was most effulgent, most beautiful, and Mahabhisha became captivated. And he looked at her with an appreciative glance. When she arrived, a gentle breeze lifted her garments slightly, and he became very attracted. And Ganga Devi herself also looked at Mahabhisha with attraction. And in that, love arose. But Lord Brahma saw this. After all, he has 4 heads, so he could see all around as to what was going on. And he said to them that where such an auspicious, great yajna is being performed is not the place to have such conduct. So he cursed both of them, although it was also a blessing. He said that Mahabhisha would be born as a mortal king on earth, and Ganga Devi herself would also descend on earth to become his consort. So, in due course, Mahabhisha did take birth on earth. He became King Shantanu of the Kuru dynasty. And one day, while he was walking along the banks of the Ganges, he saw a beautiful woman emerge from the waters. She was captivated, and she was immediately captivating to him, but he did not know that this was Ganga Devi herself. But he proposed to her that I want to marry you. And she said, okay, but I have conditions, right? There's always conditions, right? Even now, right? So she said that you must never question anything that I do. You must never oppose anything I do. And you never must speak harsh words to me, no matter what. Well, King Shantanu was going to agree to anything at this point, right? So he agreed. And time passed, and Ganga Devi bore a son. But as soon as that child was born, she drowned him in the river. Now Shantanu was shocked, but he kept his promise. He didn't say anything. And then one by one, 7 sons were born to Ganga Devi. And one by one, she immediately drowned them in the river. So finally, when the 8th son was born, Shantanu could no longer keep silent. So he harshly spoke to Ganga Devi that, why are you being so cruel? You are a mother? Which kind of mother goes and drowns their children in the water? This is improper. You must stop it at once. And then Ganga Devi revealed her true form. She says, I am Ganga Devi, and I am actually placing these newborns in my own river. And then she went on to explain the reason for this. Once, the great sage Vishishta Muni was in deep meditation, and he was in care of a wish-fulfilling cow named Kamadhenu. And while he was in deep meditation, 8 Vasus, the attendants of Lord Indra, passed by. And as they were passing by, the eldest of the Vasus, named Dayu, his wife said, I want that wish-fulfilling cow. So Dayu gathered his 7 brothers, devised a plan how to steal this cow. And as they were executing this plan, Vishishta Muni opens his eyes, catches them in the act. And he says, what kind of devatas are you? You're acting like mere men stealing a cow. And so he cursed them, that you shall become men on earth. You'll be born on earth. Now they came to their senses and said, please, no, forgive us. Vishishta Muni said, I cannot take this curse back. However, because 7 of you were simply assisting, your time on earth will be insignificant. You'll be born on earth, but you'll be liberated very quickly. And so with Vishishta Muni's mercy and Ganga Devi's compassion, she became their mother and was liberating them immediately. But the 8th Vasu, the eldest, Dayu, who had orchestrated the plan, who was the leader of the group, he would be cursed to remain on earth for a very, very, very long life and would be bereft of any female companionship. So Ganga Devi said that this is that child. And although he will have a very, very long life on earth, his life would be filled with glorious deeds. And after this revelation, Ganga Devi told Shantanu, you broke your promise, so I have to leave. And I will raise this child and return him when he is ready. And with that, Ganga Devi took the baby and disappeared. Of course, Shantanu was devastated. What has happened? This teaches us that we can never be happy in this material world. This material world is full of karma, suffering, unhappiness. The only solution is to turn towards and depend on Krishna. So Ganga Devi took this child, and with her guidance and the guidance of great sages and rishis like Brihaspati, Parashurama, he was taught all sorts of different things: bhakti, Vedic philosophy, warfare, politics, all the branches of dharma. And so in this way, he knew everything. And many years later, Shantanu was again at the bank of the Ganges. You'll see throughout this story that he really likes the Ganges. Everything happens there practically. And so when he was there, he saw a very handsome young man who was shooting arrows very expertly. And he wondered, who is this? Where has he come from? And Ganga Devi then appeared herself in front of King Shantanu and said that this is actually our 8th son. And he has learned all the different items that he needed to learn under my guidance and under the guidance of sages and devas. And therefore, his name is Devavrata. And having said that, she handed Devavrata to King Shantanu. So King Shantanu was overwhelmed with joy. He saw a prince that was brilliant, noble, sober, knew everything. He was very, very happy. And he declared publicly that Devavrata would be the heir apparent to the throne. And Devavrata loyally assisted his father with the affairs of the kingdom, and everything was going on very nicely. However, about 4 years later, he was again on the banks of the Ganges, and he was there this time hunting. And there he came across Satyavati, the daughter of the fisherman. And he smelled a most enchanting fragrance, even though she was born out of a fish. As she was climbing out of a boat on the banks of the river, as she was completely enchanting, beautiful, captivating, he wanted her. Now, the story of Satyavati is that, yes, she was born out of a fish. She used to smell like a fish. She assisted her father ferrying passengers across the river and was always surrounded by the fish market. But one day, she ferried across a great sage named Parasara Muni. And as they were crossing the river, in Parasara Muni's heart came a divine realization from the Lord himself. And he said to Satyavati that the Lord is going to appear very soon as a Shakti Avesha avatar to compile the Vedas. And I want you to do the service of being the mother. So Satyavati agreed. And immediately she became pregnant, and immediately she gave birth to this child. So in that way, the two of them were instruments for the desire of the Lord himself. This was not out of lust. And as soon as the child was born, he was named Vyasadeva. And he immediately left for the forest, but he said to his mother before leaving that if you ever need anything, if you ever need any help, call me and I will be there. And after this service, Parasara Muni gave the benediction to Satyavati that she would always smell very fragrant and that she would still remain a maiden. So this was that Satyavati that Shantanu was extremely captivated with. And so he decided to ask her father for her hand in marriage. But her father agreed, but with a condition, right? And he said that only the sons born of Satyavati should be the heirs of the throne. Now Shantanu was devastated. He could not agree to this because he had promised, not only promised, but promised publicly, that Devavrata would be the heir to the throne. And certainly he was qualified. So he returned to the kingdom very full of sorrow, very devastated. And seeing his father so withdrawn, Devavrata went to him and said, "Oh father, what is paining your heart? What is troubling you? How can I help you?" Now Shantanu did not want to speak openly about his personal desire. Instead, in a roundabout way, he very softly said that, "Oh son, what would happen if you were to die in the battlefield? How would the Kuru dynasty continue? Who would inherit the throne?" You see, sense gratification is so powerful that here, even Shantanu himself was willing to neglect his son's future life. This sense gratification is so devastating, so powerful, that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "Indriya yanam hi charatam, yamano nuvidiyate, tad asya harati pragnam, vayurnavam ivam vasi." That as a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. So, Shantanu's indirect words were enough for Devavrata to understand his father's desire. And without a moment's hesitation, he went to the fisherman and said that, "I give you the promise that I will give up the throne. I promise you that the sons of Satyavati can have the throne. I will never claim it." But the fisherman was very clever. He was very forward-thinking. He was very cautious. And he said, "But what about your sons? What if they were to challenge and lay claim to the throne? What would happen to the sons of my daughter?" So then Devavrata took an even greater vow. He said, "I will remain a brahmachari for life. I will never marry. I will never have offsprings. I promise you that the sons of Satyavati shall inherit the throne. And furthermore, I promise that I will continue forever to protect the Kuru dynasty and make sure that it is always taken care of." Now this was unbelievable. It never heard of that a Kshatriya would be a brahmachari for life, that he would never have a kingdom for himself, he would never fight for a kingdom for himself, and he would protect another's kingdom. So the heavens thundered, the demigods showered flowers, and they proclaimed Devavrata that henceforth will be called Bhishma, the one who took the fearful, most awe-inspiring vow. And Shantanu, overwhelmed by his son's renunciation, by his sacrifice, he gave the benediction to Devavrata, to Bhishma Dev, of Icha Ritu. That is the ability to choose the time of one's death. So Bhishma Dev is the type of person that is exemplified in the Bhagavad Gita as a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still. He alone can achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So, of course, Shantanu married Satyavati. Satyavati bore 2 sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya, and Bhishma became the protector of the Kuru dynasty, especially when King Shantanu left his body. And then Chitrangada was also killed in the battle, so Vichitravirya became the king, even though he was quite young. And then the time came for his marriage. So Bhishma Dev went to Kashi, which was the tradition, to get princesses. And there were 3 princesses named Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. And they were having their Swayamvara ceremony, which was choosing husbands. And there, Bhishma defeated all the kings, took the 3 princesses by force, as was the Kshatriya tradition, and brought them home to Vichitravirya. Now 2 of the princesses agreed to marry, but Amba confessed that her heart was already given to another named King Shalva. Bhishma Dev said, I didn't know that, and he was feeling, compassionate, and immediately sent her back to King Shalva. But King Shalva said, I will not take you, because you have been won by another man. So in humiliation and despair, she came back to Bhishma and said, you must marry me because you kidnapped me. You held my hand. But Bhishma Dev said, I cannot do so. I'm bound by a vow. I cannot marry you. So then she went to Bhishma Dev's guru, Parashurama, and explained the situation. And he said, don't worry, Bhishma Dev will marry you. I mean, he's my disciple. So he went over to Bhishma Dev, and Bhishma Dev said, I cannot. Please ask me anything else, but not this, because I'm bound by this vow. So Parashurama became agitated, became frustrated, and challenged Bhishma Dev to a fight. Now this Bhishma Dev could not refuse, right? This guru is challenging him, telling him what to do. So they fought. They fought for 23 days. And of course, Bhishma Dev knew all the strategies and tactics. After all, he was trained by his own guru who he was fighting. And on the 23rd day, he decided to take an ashtra that was given by Lord Shiva himself to attack his guru. But the demigods came before Bhishma Dev and said, please don't do this. This is your guru. It is not right. So Bhishma Dev humbly withdrew from the fight. And Parashurama went to Amba and said, I tried everything. I can't help you. I'm sorry. So Amba became even more agitated. She became extremely enraged. And so she performed severe austerities to Lord Shiva to get some vengeance. Lord Shiva came before her and gave her the benediction that you will become a boy in your next life, and you will be the cause for Bhishma's demise. So she was satisfied. She entered the fire immediately to end her life. And then she became a newborn in her next life to Draupada Maharaj and his wife. Now it so happened that they had been praying to Lord Shiva for a boy. And so when this child was born, and Shiva had promised them, so when the child was born, it was actually a girl. And they said, well, but Shiva promised us a boy. What's going on? Said, okay, there must be some plan here. So they said, we will announce to everyone that this is a boy. They named the child Shikandi and would dress the child up as a boy. Shikandi, of course, remembered her past life and remembered her desire for vengeance. So in due time, Vichitravirya also died, but he had left no heirs to the Kuru dynasty. The Kuru dynasty faced extinction. And so Satyavati called Bhishma Dev and said, what should we do? We have to preserve the Kuru dynasty. She implored him that you can break your vow. It's okay, because there's no sons, But Bhishma Dev said, no, I will never break my vow. But he said, you once told me the story about Vyasadeva, do you remember? Why didn't you call him for help? And so she did. And she explained the situation to Vyasadeva and said, please help. And upon her request, Vyasadeva begot 3 sons through Niyoga. One was Dhritarashtra to Ambika. One was Pandu through Ambalika, and one was Vidura through a maidservant. So the sons of the princesses became the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And in this way, the Kuru dynasty continued. And through all of these generations, over 4 generations now we're speaking about, Bhishma Dev remained the pillar and the protector of the Kuru dynasty. He trained the Kauravas, he trained the Pandavas in everything that he had learned, warfare, statefare, and so on. And of course, we all know the lifelong enmity that Duryodhana had towards the Pandavas. All of these stories are cited in the Mahabharata. And all of this culminated in the great war of Kurukshetra, where Bhishma Dev was placed at the head of Duryodhana's army. And this is where, in the war of Kurukshetra, that Bhishma Dev faced his greatest test. The conflict between his own affection and his duty. Despite knowing the righteousness of the Pandavas' cause, despite his heart being with Krishna and the Pandavas, he was bound by the vow to fight and to protect the Kauravas. Actually, Bhishma Dev's resolution to fight with full vigor while inwardly having affection for the Pandavas teaches us the art of performing our duties while remaining Krishna conscious, while keeping Krishna at the center. So Bhishma Dev fought with unmatched valor and honor. The Shastras state that he was practically invincible, and for days he fought heroically. No one could defeat him. Yet, through all of this, his heart remained at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who he recognized not just to be the chariot driver for Arjuna, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And on the 9th day of the Kurukshetra war, the battlefield was ablaze with Bhishma Dev's valor. He was ferocious. And why was he? Because Duryodhana was actually doubting Bhishma Dev. He said, I think you're not fighting properly. I know where your loyalties really lay. So to prove that, he was trying to show that he is being faithful to the Kauravas, to Duryodhana. And so he shot arrows down like fire, and everyone before his path was being annihilated. And although he appeared to be filled with fury and anger, actually his heart was burning with love, because he was seeing Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all over the battlefield. So that day, the Kauravas were fighting with renewed hope because they had Bhishma Dev fighting so ferociously. He seemed to be unstoppable. And seeing Bhishma Dev's fierce attack and the Pandava forces falling rapidly, Lord Krishna implored Arjuna that you must face Bhishma Dev now without delay. But Arjuna was hesitant because how could he raise weapons to his own grandfather, who had raised him from childhood, who had blessed him, who had trained him? So his heart was full of compassion and his mind was wavering, but Krishna reminded him again of his duty. And he said that if Bhishma Dev was not stopped now, the entire Pandava army would be annihilated. So at last, Arjuna raised his bow and went in front of Bhishma Dev, confronted them. And they were exchanging a barrage of arrows, but Arjuna was still fighting half-heartedly because he was still seeing his grandfather in front of him. But Bhishma Dev was fighting with full enthusiasm because he wanted to see how Lord Krishna would react, how he would break his vow to protect out of love his devotee. He even shot arrows at Krishna that pierced Krishna himself. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that this was not painful for Krishna, it was actually pleasure for Krishna. It was a rasa between Krishna and his devotee. Bhishma shot so many arrows at Arjuna that Arjuna could not keep up. His chariot splintered, his armor pierced, he fell down to the ground from the chariot. He was almost defeated and certainly in trouble. But Bhishma Dev kept going because he wanted to see how Krishna would break his promise. Krishna had promised that he would not touch any weapons. He would not fight in the war. But he wanted to see how Krishna will break that promise for his devotee. Because although Krishna sees everyone equally, he favors and loves his devotees more. And Krishna also wanted to honor Bhishma Dev's desire. See, Bhishma Dev wanted to see the transcendental form of Krishna decorated by the wounds of his own devotee. So Krishna, seeing Arjuna so overwhelmed, fallen on the ground, in divine fury, he picked up a chariot wheel, placed it over his head with 2 hands, and started to charge towards Bhishma Dev like a lion charges towards an elephant. He had taken a vow not to take up arms in the war, but love had taken precedence over promise. And as he ran forward, his yellow garments fluttered in the air. His hair flowed in the wind. The dust of the battlefield clung to his radiant face. Beads of sweat dropped from his forehead. His eyes blazed like fire. And the chariot wheel resembled a Sudarshan chakra. Everyone stopped what they were doing. They were mesmerized by the scene in front of them. Bhishma Dev was looking on, stunned and overjoyed. He was smiling. Tears were flowing from Bhishma's eyes as he beheld the Lord apparently in anger, but so very beautiful. He had prayed to see this divine warrior form of Krishna, and now that desire was being fulfilled. And he thought, how glorious is my fortune to see the Lord of all the worlds coming towards me, charging towards me in divine wrath. Who could be more blessed than I? And as Krishna charged closer, ready to hurl that wheel, his voice resounded across the battlefield. He said, you are the root of this disastrous war, Bhishma Dev. When a king acts blindly, it is the minister's duty to restrain him. But you failed to stop Dhritarashtra from this folly, and for that failure, you must be punished. Bhishma Dev smiled and replied back that, "Oh Krishna, I tried my very best to dissuade the king, but the love for his son has blinded him. Still, if you hold me responsible, I welcome whatever punishment you desire to give me. Even I will die at your own hands." Now meanwhile, Arjuna was aghast. Seeing Krishna charging forward, he came to his senses. Although he wanted to avoid killing Bhishma, he certainly did not want Krishna to be defamed for having broken his vow. So Arjuna got up, started running after Krishna, trying to stop him. He held Krishna's thigh, planted his feet in the ground because Krishna was very powerful, and he's holding on tight, crying to Krishna, "Oh Krishna, please stop, please. I will kill Bhishma myself. I promise you, please stop." This sudden halt broke Krishna's trance of anger. He looked down at Arjuna, who was looking up at him with sincerity and determination, and slowly Krishna's anger dissipated. He dropped the wheel and proceeded towards the chariot. At that very moment, the sun dipped below the horizon. The conch shells blew, citing the end of the battle for that day. So this pastime demonstrates that the Supreme Lord is not conquered by power, by wealth, by ego, by knowledge. He is conquered by the pure love of his devotee. Bhishma Dev's unwavering devotion and the love for Arjuna made Krishna break his own promise and lift up a weapon. So now, that evening, Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas went to see Bhishma Dev. You see, at the end of the day's war, the opposing parties would go to each other's tents. They would eat, they would chat. It was like everything was normal. Yes, I know it sounds surreal, but that's what would happen. And Bhishma Dev welcomed them with love and affection. And Yudhishthira Maharaj asked Bhishma Dev, "How can we end this war?" Like, Yudhishthira did not really want to continue this war. He was conflicted as well. And they also knew that Bhishma Dev could not easily be defeated. So Bhishma told them of 8 conditions where he would lower his weapons and not fight back. And one of those conditions was that if a woman was to stand before him, he would drop his weapons and that would be it. So you see here that Bhishma Dev himself is telling how he can be defeated. He is giving his blessings to the Pandavas to defeat him. And then he went on to tell the history of Shikandi, that what she was, that she is a woman, that she was given a boon, and that she would be the cause of Bhishma's death. So Krishna told Arjuna that you put Shikandi in front of you, and then you can raise your arrows towards Bhishma Dev. He will lower his weapons, and Shikandi will be your shield. So on the 10th day of battle, that is exactly what Arjuna did. And seeing Shikandi, Bhishma Dev lowered his weapons, for he was not going to fight one that is a woman. And then Arjuna released a torrent of arrows, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of arrows, into every limb, every part of Bhishma Dev's body. Bhishma Dev fell down onto the bed of arrows. But he did not die immediately, because he had a boon from his father, King Shantanu, that he could choose the time of his death. Now from this, one can think that, well, Arjuna was the favorite of Krishna, right? That Krishna was favoring Arjuna and was at enmity with Bhishma Dev. But in actuality, Krishna was very pleased with Bhishma Dev. He was a great devotee of Krishna. Indeed, sometimes a devotee can please the Lord by playing the enemy of the Lord. So after the war, Yudhishthira Maharaj, although he had won the kingdom, he was certainly not happy. His heart was filled with sorrow because of the countless lives that had been lost. The elders, the teachers, the friends, the relatives, everyone. And so feeling responsible for all this bloodshed, he was unable to take joy in victory. So out of compassion, Lord Krishna personally brought Yudhishthira and the Pandavas where Bhishma Dev lay on that bed of arrows. And there the atmosphere was very spiritually charged, because a great devotee of Lord Krishna, Bhishma Dev, was lying there. Great sages from all over the universe came there, Vyasadeva, Narada Muni, Parisharama, Devala, Vashishta, so many. And although Bhishma Dev's body was pierced in so many hundreds and hundreds of places, his face radiated like the morning sun. And his consciousness was fixed on Lord Sri Krishna. But when he saw Krishna personally approaching, his eyes filled with tears of gratitude and love. And for days on end, for weeks actually, it was 58 days, on that bed of arrows, he was instructing, meditating, and fasting. He said to Yudhishthira Maharaj that, O king, no one can understand the plans of the Lord. He is the supreme personality of Godhead himself. You have nothing to lament, for everything happens under his supreme will. He explained that devotees accept all circumstances as the Lord's arrangement, even when they appear painful or unjust. He glorified the Lord's Bhakta Vatsala, his affection for his devotees. He explained the castes and orders, Varnashram Dharma. He explained the 9 qualifications that a human being should possess. He explained to Yudhishthira Maharaj Raja Dharma, the duties of the king, the difference between justice and mercy, truth and compassion, policy and morality, how to act during adversity, Apad Dharma, the process of liberation, Moksha Dharma, the duties of a wife and family, Sriti Dharma, and so much more. And after doing all of that, he finally turned his full attention to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, who stood before him, Lord Krishna himself, the friend of Arjuna, the friend of the Pandavas. And at that time, Bhishma Dev glorified Lord Krishna himself. He spoke 11 beautiful verses. Those verses are known as Bhishma Stuti, and they are in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, chapter 9, verses 32 to 42. So how about we read those verses now? Would you like to do that? We'll read the translations. Bhishma Dev said, "Let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, which was so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes, being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending to the material world, although from him only the material world is created. Sri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on the earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the Kamala tree. His body attracts everyone in the 3 planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his